All right, we are live. All right, just a moment. To anybody who joins very quickly here, I can already see you in chat. I've got to reload this for a second here and then mute it, obviously. Okay, not paying attention to chat currently. I'll repeat this several times, I assure you, before this stream is done. As people slowly filter in, I do have notes again. First, quick analysis, and I'm tired of watching myself actually on that as well. So I'm going to cover up chat that way. That doesn't actually help. This can be a little bit buggy, honestly. I don't like watching myself speak when I'm actually looking at the live feed of myself. Let's analyze the vice presidential debate. I think this was a lot more exciting, honestly, and a lot more on point for the most part than the first presidential debate. If the second presidential debate and the third are more like this, Trump's going to run away with this election. Pence did very well. He won handily. No reservations on that. It's fairly obvious, I think. Kaine looked angry, and at times he wanted to get jabs in. He wanted to get under Pence's skin. Didn't work. Pence immediately reminded me of a more cognitively advanced George W. Bush. In action and mannerism, more like George W. And he is a neocon. I still don't particularly like him, although he basically just echoed Trump's sentiment. But perhaps more intelligent, more capable at speaking, certainly. Tim Kaine and Mike Pence, though, both passed the fundamental central challenge. We can get into why I think Pence ran away with this and won handily. But on the central principle of, well, if the president dies, if Clinton or Trump get into office and keel over, are you capable of providing leadership? Both of them passed the test in the sense that Trump's fans looking at Pence, I imagine, would say, okay, this is a person we could deal with as the president if Trump is elected, if that were to happen. Clinton's fans will look at Tim Kaine. They'll think the same thing. For undecided voters, I think this will probably predominantly put them at ease about both candidates to some extent. That being said, and much more helpful for Trump. Now, I stated prior that the vice presidential debate was utterly meaningless unless one candidate was handily ahead throughout basically the entire stream. Pence was. This could move the barometer of the election back in Trump's direction. It could really set the groundwork if he does well at the next debate. And because it's town hall style and because hopefully there'll be more fair moderation. Did you notice the moderator tonight was completely fair? There anyone claiming, Kaine was blasted by the moderator, Pence was no, completely not. Very fair moderation. I wish the first debate had been more similar to this, honestly. It would have been more interesting without so much combative crap. Kaine did attempt multiple times to speak over Pence, far more than Pence, by the way, did. I wonder if being liberal is going to analyze that. But before I look at chat, and again, for the 400 people tuning in, now continuing to rise, I'm not looking at chat right now. I've got to get my sort of rant and analysis out of the way. Then I'll go to chat. I may actually spend a little bit longer than I planned on this, specifically because I thought it was going to be more like a Ryan versus Biden or something. It was going to be more on the boring side. And it wasn't. It was actually pretty informative. It was a lot more substance, a lot less of the combative stuff. And again, for those just joining, Pence won handily. I don't think there will be many questions in anyone's mind. You can look, by the way, the Clinton-friendly media will probably try to say, oh, nobody cares about this anyway. And by the way, Pence is anti-abortion. I do think on the last sort of faith-related stuff, Pence sort of, well, certainly lost me because I'm pro-choice. But at the same time, does it hurt with a lot of undecided voters? I happen not to like this, but a lot of people increasingly are becoming more pro-life. It's actually very strange that in people in favor, especially of like late-term abortions, is decreasing over time. I'd be more ambivalent on that. I would be to the left of Clinton, honestly, on that issue. That being said, though, for 90% of the debate, it was all about Mike Pence. He got the line of the night. And I don't think there's going to be much argument over that. I think you'll see probably some damage control, honestly, from like being liberal, Salon, MSNBC, and so forth. The line of the night, and I've got it here, That was even beneath you and Hillary Clinton, and that's pretty low. That was, of course, Mike Pence responding to Kane's suggestion that Trump would begin a nuclear war because of his apparent support for the idea of giving nuclear weapons to various states. Now, Pence didn't point this out, but I'll point it out because I'm aware of this. Saudi Arabia either already has nuclear weapons, and thus that's a non-issue, or has them on short order from Pakistan for bankrolling their nuclear program. So on that, I don't think anybody really gives a fuck. As far as South Korea and Japan, I am ambivalent to it because I have no reason to believe that the largely pacifistic Japanese and the stable, civilized, no real problems there other than the DPRK South Koreans would ever deploy nuclear weapons. I can understand why it would rankle some people. I personally wouldn't care if Tokyo had a couple hundred nukes to play with, provide a counterbalance to China. I don't think they would end up, it certainly wouldn't be them pressing the little red button first on Armageddon Day. Kane's line of the night was scripted, and here's the other reason Kane was at a disadvantage, and he actually, I think, underperformed a little. Passed the basic fundamental test of one heartbeat from the presidency, but underperformed on substance and issue. Two reasons. First, he was scripted. He repeated himself line for line over and over like a record. He actually was just short of being a Marco Roboto on the debate stage. And I'm sure that people will talk about this. People will put together those, those compilations where somebody in the same speech, they say the same thing a dozen times. It'll be sort of like Trump, oh, who's going to build the wall? Except perhaps a little bit less substance related. Secondly, he constantly went back to the taxes issue. Trump won't release his tax returns, refusing in several cases. Twice he refused to even address North Korea when asked about it. Tim Kaine did. And instead reverted to, well, Trump hasn't released his tax returns. Maybe he has ties to Russia. Pence decimated him on the topic of foreign policy. On domestic policy, it was a bit more even, but a lot of this debate was geared towards foreign policy. I'm going to go through here and speak for anybody just joining, not looking at chat. I'm just analyzing right now. I've got some notes. Another of Kane's better lines was, if you can't meet the Nixon standard with regards to tax returns, ultimately that whole issue fell flat. Pence actually drew laughter from the audience. The likability factor does factor in, not to a great extent, but it does matter when you're talking about a presidential candidate or a candidate for any other office. The famous comparison was George W. versus Al Gore, and the famous poll at the time, who would you rather have a beer with? Who would you rather have walk your dog? And people thought that might have tipped things in his favor. Now, Florida election, of course, aside, hanging in and pregnant and dimpled Chads and Supreme Court aside. Pence got about 2 good lines in for every line that Kaine got, not because he appeared specifically more knowledgeable on every issue. On some, yes, certainly on foreign policy. More because Tim Kaine refused often to even answer the question and reverted to Trump's tax returns. Over and over, there were over a half a dozen points in this debate when all he did was ignore the question and respond, rhetorically to himself on the subject of Trump either being controlled by the Russians or the tax return argument. The problem being, Trump and Pence, and this is true, Pence is telling the truth when he says this, they have never adulated Vladimir Putin on a moral basis. They simply pointed out, I happen to concur with this, I think most people in the country concur with this, that Putin has projected Russian agenda at a better clip on the world stage than Obama has, and that Clinton as Secretary of State has, not because he's a good person, but because he commands respect from others through force. Now, the United States, hopefully, in so doing under a Trump presidency, projects its force in a charismatic rather than a military sense. The problem being, and Pence pointed this out with peace through strength, I don't know if that always works, but it is an effective line of reasoning. If the United States is a force to be reckoned with that people think will attack them if they do any harm to the United States or its allies, they're less likely to attack the United States. It has worked, generally speaking, when we're not dicking around in some proxy conflict, as we have over and over. In between proxy conflicts, we're doing fine, generally speaking. Obviously, I think the majority of the American public, it doesn't matter whether you consult RCP or even a poll put out by Jezebel, the majority of the American people don't approve of our foreign policy direction. The fact that this debate was a little more than half foreign policy probably plays well to the Trump-Pence ticket, as opposed to domestic policy, especially the economy, where outside of the Rust Belt right now, a lot of other people have put the economy on the back burner. Areas that have been decimated by the loss of especially coal and manufacturing between the coasts, those areas are much more receptive to Trump's message, and especially places along the border as well on the immigration issue. Those are things that Pence commanded this debate on. Those are the ones in the competitive parts of the U.S. Those are the big issues, not the economy, not the economy generally, other than manufacturing loss. Clinton's openly gone after coal several times on the campaign trail fairly recently. So I think Pence obviously won this debate. Again, for the last time, not looking at chat right now, just analyzing. Pence also said he's a very fitting running mate for Hillary Clinton. While people are struggling, Clinton and Kaine want more of the same. More effective, I think, than a lot of people. Probably nobody will be talking about this particular quip. But I bet that a lot of the undecided voters tipped in the Trump direction when they heard that, because it is essentially a pretty good rundown of the two campaigns. Trump is proposing a so-called radical new direction. I call it a mild reformist direction. Clinton represents essentially, and other than Obamacare, of course, represents the status quo. Now, Pence also got in a good attack here on what Bill Clinton said, and happened to concur with him, that Obamacare was a crazy idea. And that is true. Bill Clinton the other day, he says Obamacare is a crazy idea and basically bullshit. And then he turns around and applauds it later on that day. It's almost fantastical what's happening with Bill, how quickly his eloquence and coherence, his infamous speaking abilities, as far as being able to deliver a speech, no other living individual within politics rivals Bubba Bill. He's lost that ability completely. He's completely geriatric at this point, can no longer do anything. Pence attacked Kaine's administration when he was governor of Virginia. They were speaking in Virginia, of course, on the topic of debt. And this is also true. Pence, as the governor of Indiana, did oversee an economic boom. Kaine did, as governor, oversee the general decline of Virginia's economy. Now, part of this, Pence wasn't complete in an unbiased sense, I state this. Part of that is due to fracking and things of that nature benefiting states like Indiana. That being said, he did run a balanced budget in his administration. Tim Kaine did not. He gets a point here. I'm not sure the average person outside of these two states necessarily cares, and I'm not sure how wise it is for Pence to attack Virginia's economy. Some Virginia voters may get personally offended by it. They shouldn't, but they might in their sort of cognitive dissonance. Then again, of course, Indiana's technically in play. Virginia's pretty safe blue now. Indiana's pretty safe red. They're not really in play anymore, kind of, sort of. Depends really on what polling firm you ask. As an aggregate, no, they're not really in play. Going through this a little bit more. Pence also broke the third wall several times. Kaine didn't do this. Kaine did look a little bit less comfortable debating than Mike Pence did. Pence was perfectly comfortable with breaking the third wall and addressing those watching the debate, potentially through a live stream or on TV. Live stream in my case, of course. Not going to watch it on Fox on the TV or CNN or anything like that. He addressed them directly and essentially came out and said, well, you can vote for more of the same or you can vote for change. They don't care about illegal immigration, we do, and so forth, making these comparisons. Effective, especially by addressing the much larger audience than just the moderator and the people in the room. That's a fairly good tactic to use. And it doesn't really get used enough in many cases by people who are campaigning. It's remarkably effective because it draws in, it causes those that aren't physically there to actually pay attention to what you're saying. He also attacked the concept of implicit bias that's been brought up somewhat unwisely by Hillary Clinton. Now, this is clearly to bolster her support with minority demographics and with the youth. It's been somewhat effective on the former, completely fell flat on the latter. Pence, meanwhile, is trying to counter that by saying, well, we shouldn't automatically jump to conclusions every time there's a police-involved shooting. He famously pointed out, of course, what about situations where a black police officer has shot a black individual? Is it implicit bias? Then went on to become apologetic and say, yes, we do need criminal justice reform. This, by the way, is true. But to immediately jump on the race issue just seems desperate. It seems pandering. Probably also rather effective. Most of Tim Kaine's better jabs tonight were obviously scripted and thus fell short. They were also delivered in a more awkward manner. Pence was very conversational. So like in the sense of not looking, I guess, temporarily, even like a professional politician, so much as somebody you're having a more interpersonal chat with. Tim Kaine was on point as far as delivering what were obviously coached answers that he practiced to deliver. The problem with that delivery method is that it very quickly exhausts all the possible grammar that you can use within any vein of reasoning, especially when, as Kaine did, unwise decision, go back to the same issues over and over. Issues that, and Pence, another great line of his, oh, that must have done well with some focus group, which he delivered in response to Kaine constantly talking about taxes. I think it was the fourth or fifth time that Kaine mentioned it. He said, oh, that must have done well, the focus group. That's probably the second best line of the night, honestly, and also drew a few chuckles from the crowd. Now, the crowd wasn't supposed to clap, chuckle, boo, or do anything like that. So when you get a crowd that's been admonished not to do so, and they laugh at something involuntarily, it's a pretty good indicator that what was just said was at least mildly amusing. Kaine wasn't amusing. In fact, I think I was almost wrong when I said, well, he'll probably be the gaffe master. A gaffe, Biden style, implies that it will be funny. It will be humor at the person's expense who delivered it. Kaine didn't do that. He just seemed robotic and almost distant, a little bit cold. His manner of speech, what he was saying, was less substantial than what Pence brought to the table. As such, for those of you who haven't already heard this, you know, the 500 or 600 other people that have joined the stream, Pence won the debate. Hands down, no questions, no argument, no debate. Pence won. He completely overrode everything that Tim Kaine did from start to finish, with the exception of the abortion issue, which, well, I don't like it. I don't like pro-life ideology. I think that it should be a woman's right to choose. And as I said, I am to the left of people like Clinton on this issue. I am more ambivalent on partial birth abortion. Everything else I'd be to the left of them on. I don't see the need for any further restrictions beyond that, and that should be the only one that's even legal to restrict. There should be no haranguing the providers. I don't care if it's taxpayer funded. I just honestly don't. It doesn't bother me for that to be the case. I would say on that issue, though, he makes a trade-off. Pence does. Technically speaking, the majority of the U.S. population is against abortion. I realize that I'm in the minority there. What he ought to have said to make it even more effective, and he didn't do this. Now, he was a lot more on point than Trump in the first debate. Most of the time, when given the opportunity to make a good attack, he took it and completely obliterated Kaine. He could have said something to the effect of, I understand that if I am a public official, Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. I happen to personally disagree with it. I happen to personally detest the idea of partial birth abortion, but I will uphold the law as the vice president, as will Trump. He could have said that. Instead, he sort of muttered his way through it and made it a faith statement. Very good with evangelicals. I think he might have been targeting like Missouri and Arizona, honestly, more than the Rust Belt, figuring that's more economics. Some parts of the country are more immigration, and that those are different issues that don't really necessarily involve this particular argument. I will say, though, I would be more in agreement with the Clinton campaign on abortion than with Trump and Pence. I still think, by the way, that Trump doesn't care. Pence might bring it up as a faith value statement. Trump doesn't bring it up. Doesn't care about the issue. He said back in the 90s, he didn't care if women got abortions. He didn't care if gays got married. And you noticed the Republicans, for the first time in modern electoral history, including Pence, so you can tell he's more religious, certainly, than Trump. Trump's an urbanite from New York City. Pence is, you know, Rust Belt Hoosier, sort of evangelical. That's what he is. But he didn't bring up gay marriage, which was smart because the Republicans have repeatedly shot themselves in the foot. And shooting yourself in the foot was brought up by Tim Kaine, specifically on the idea of Miss Universe. Now, it fell flat. It was an attempt at a joke. It wasn't seen, I guess, as humorous as what Pence was saying with regards to focus groups and being lower, than Hillary and Kaine could be and so forth. Those brought laughs. When Tim Kaine said, oh, well, Trump can't even start a Twitter feud with Miss Universe without shooting himself in the foot, probably was a focus group tested line, but appeared to fall flat. I'm not sure if really anything Kaine said is going to be beyond the mediocre in being effective. Pence, meanwhile, delivered solid gold line after line, admittedly. And I say this as somebody who didn't like Mike Pence when he was chosen, still doesn't like him on policies, tolerant of him at best. In the sense of being a good debater, I was wrong and he's a good asset to the Trump campaign. In the sense of being a good speaker, being interpersonal, and being on point, he did much better than Trump did at the first presidential debate. I thought Trump carried it very vaguely in the first debate. Here, there's no question, though. Pence won the vice presidential debate. Now, again, though, you've got to realize the viewership of this debate's smaller. A lot fewer people care what the vice presidential, the running mates say. And so the effect will be blunted even if it's true that, universally people say, well, yeah, even maybe some Clinton fans begrudgingly admit, oh, Kaine was off tonight or something like that. It will be a blunted effect, but I did predict it would have some effect if it were fairly one-sided, and I register that as being true. I'd give it an 80-20, honestly, in favor of Pence. It was a fairly remarkable performance. I expected it to be more boring than it was. I did expect more substance, perhaps, because these are the running mates. Typically, that's what happens. They get into the nitty-gritty substance. The main candidates, the presidential candidates, just hammer each other. But Pence kept hammering Kaine fairly effectively. It was like smacking a crab with a sledgehammer. Kaine, meanwhile, didn't manage to do that. And Pence also brought up a basket of deplorables, irredeemable, and things of that nature. Those are effective. Those are effective lines of attack, which Trump admittedly should have brought up at the first debate. He didn't have to go on the full frontal attack in order to mention them. I happen to disagree with his strategy in the first debate, but at the same time, Pence running interference brought them up to great effect. His monologue also regarding veterans, regarding fallen soldiers, specifically, I think it was Sadowski that he was speaking of, or I can't, it's one of those words that I'm going to have difficulty pronouncing forever, saying, well, we'll never forget your son. I always give her a big hug. That monologue also probably tugged at the heartstrings of the more patriotic elements of the country, which are on board with Trump to begin with. But as far as drumming up support, probably effective. I'm still, though, scratching my head as far as any individual line Kaine delivered that wasn't obviously scripted that was particularly effective throughout the entire debate, with the exception of, again, focusing on those who happen to be pro-choice. Other than that, I can't really think of much that he did effectively. He looked very, very businessman-like and very coached. He looked very kind of Marco Robotish. Pence was not. Pence was more on point. So now I'm going to go to chat, having looked at this a little bit, analyzed it a bit, answer some questions, read some comments and so forth, just hang out with people. Like I said, I may spend, an extra 10 minutes or so beyond what I planned, because honestly, this is a pretty good debate. I didn't expect it to be that entertaining. I expected it not to be perhaps as humdrum as the first presidential debate. Let's face it, that's one for the ages for probably the wrong reasons. But I didn't expect it to be this substantial, honestly, other than Kaine reverting to tax return mode every 5 minutes. Other than that, it was great. And including, I'll say this again, for those that didn't hear it maybe, both of them fundamentally pass the challenge of convincing the softer fans, I suppose, of the respective candidacies that they're capable of leading the country if the president suddenly strokes out or gets killed or something like that. They both passed it in that sense. As far as undecided voters go, it might be a totally different issue. I'm not an undecided voter, so I can't claim to know that camp at the moment. But for those who already lean towards one side or the other, probably takes care of some of their fears, especially on Trump's side, because there was lingering fear, especially on foreign policy. Most of the stones were already laid as far as the foundation of his foreign policy. The capstone is, can actually command without starting a nuclear war. I think that those concerns were largely taken care of tonight. I do expect there will be an attempt to cover for Tim Kaine, to say, oh, he had a head cold or something like that, as to why his performance was a little bit on the lackluster side. So I'm going to open up chat here. I'm going to move this feed off to the side so it doesn't distract me. Along with the notes. Well, I can probably just close the notes, actually. I don't even have to save those. But I'm going to move this off to the side so that doesn't distract me, and try to block out the other video view too. You now use a single moderator list for all your live streams and events. Well, no shit. Previous moderators have been added automatically, but I'm the only one. Nobody else can command on my channel. Not even people that I know. No, seriously, that's the way it's going to be. I'm not going to ban anybody. I don't care what you're saying. So I'm looking at chat right now. Let's see what other people say. Yes, notice me, senpai. Sticks for, will you disavow? But I'm going to go through here. Comments are going fast as always, so it might be a little bit difficult to respond to them. Just keep that in mind. Yeah. Honestly, they're going too fast for me to read any of this shit. Hi, Adolf. Opinion on the leaks. The leaks, I'll cover this briefly. Since there's over 1,000 people watching this stream, it's actually, if you told me a year ago that I'd have like 1,000 people watching me at the same time on a live stream, I wouldn't have believed you, honestly. The level of growth of this channel is blowing me away. It's well past what I expected to be at by the end of this year. Literature, too. That's doing far better than expected. Honestly, I don't know quite what I did, other than, I guess, make political videos. But yes, as far as the leaks go, the Guccifer 2.0 leaks, for anybody that doesn't know, Guccifer 2.0, same hacker from like the DNC and all this other stuff, sort of in affiliation with WikiLeaks without being with them or partnered with them, just sort of a spiritual ally of Julian Assange, I guess, has released a bunch of Clinton Foundation material. And it's pretty damaging because it infers that there's a good possibility that TARP funds, which were used post-Great Recession when that began, funds were allocated to essentially bail out segments of the financial sector that were struggling. It looks like Nancy Pelosi, Barney Frank, and a whole bunch of other congressional Democrats misused these funds. It's not certain that that's what happened, but it appears to indicate that that's the case. Now, I said on my video on this before, Republicans have done the same thing under Republican administrations. I'm not going to give them a pass, trust me, because I'm not a Republican partisan. But right now we have a Democratic administration, and the Democrats are the ones getting blamed for having done so. And it should be thought of as an issue that's valid to discuss in terms of the election, because at the time this was happening, Hillary was in office. I think she was still a senator at the time specifically that most of this was happening. But the Clinton Foundation server is hosting this material. Now, people attempted to seize upon, before I get back to comments, the existence of a pay-to-play folder on the server as evidence that this was fake. Guccifer just made this all up out of thin air. Firstly, why would somebody dedicate the hundreds of hours required to actually pull something like that off just to smear a presidential candidate, knowing that they wouldn't be able to deliver evidence that what they were saying was adequate, number one, and accurate, number two? That's the first point. Number two, pay-to-play was openly used within several emails from the DNC. Clinton directly referred to this as pay-to-play. So why wouldn't there be a pay-to-play folder? Apparently, that's just the term that she happened to use. She happened to favor that term because she's corrupt. So I'm not seeing exactly what the point is to disclaiming the leak, because there's a pay-to-play folder within the leak, because she's already used that language in provably true emails released from the DNC that are referred to by other parties. So I'm not seeing exactly why you'd be so mystified. Now, looking back at the comments here. Now, For anybody that doesn't know, Bobby Jones is Spud Croyley, an ally of Wilberg Breder. He's just a lifetime troll. He's not actually a shill for Hillary. He doesn't appear to care about politics beyond raising other people's ire. And since Trump fans tend to be more excited about the election because Hillary Clinton's fans are preparing for a funeral, Trump's fans are preparing for an actual celebration, in the words of Scott Adams, which is true. So if you're going to troll somebody, you're going to troll the Trump fans. You're not going to troll Clinton fans. The only ones that'll react are CTR, and they'd get paid per post. What's the fun in that? So, yeah, I can understand why he would. He's also the person who stated before that he was the white, as in the Caucasian or something like that. You should watch some of the videos ascribed to this Spud Croyley character, and I think you'll get a pretty good idea of the perhaps madness, honestly, that you're dealing with. I have respect for his trolling. Very effective. Yeah. But I'm looking at the chat here, so if anyone wants to answer any questions, ask any questions. I'll look through. Keep in mind, though, I may not get to them all because they're going so quickly. Yeah, that's a good point. Pence could have handled the abortion issue more ably, but he possibly couldn't have done it without disenfranchising evangelicals. I think he weighed the two mentally very quickly before he spoke. Which he did a good job. If that was his point, he did okay. As far as somebody like myself, maybe younger voters, yeah, probably loses a few points for Trump, but at the same time probably gobbles up twice that in the fact that, again, unfortunately, I would say, the majority of the U.S. population doesn't like the idea of abortion. Now, I don't disagree with Pence's point that the adoption should be more widely utilized. He's right on that. I have no problem with that if somebody wants to, but the decision ultimately should be that of the woman. It's her body. It's her choice. Roe v. Wade's clear. It's a Supreme Court decision. But here's the thing. Anyone worried that evil Trump and Pence are going to take their abortion rights away, it's a Supreme Court decision. It would require a massive groundswell of support within Congress and a change to the U.S. Constitution to make abortion illegal in this country. That's never going to happen. The support for it simply does not exist. You couldn't get enough states and or people in Congress on board to do anything about it. So for me, even though I deeply disagree with Pence on the issue, it's a non-issue ultimately because there's nothing he can fucking do about it. He's not going to do a damn thing. He's, continuing the no federal funding for abortion will continue. I happen to disagree with him on that. That's one effect he'd have. But as far as preventing women from getting an abortion, it's never going to happen because the law is already clear. Roe v. Wade is settled. It's a dead issue. It's from the 70s. It's an extremely old issue. There hasn't been enough of a building in support for the so-called pro-life, I call it anti-choice movement, to really stop it. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. But for anybody who didn't hear me previously, Pence won, hands down, completely. There's no argument here. Pence decimated his opponent. I expect that some of the CTR shills that were rambling about how well Hillary did in the first debate probably won't even bother to show up to shill tonight. It'll be, do I think tonight will cause a change in the polls by Londo? Maybe. I predicted that any change in the polls would only happen if it was a fairly one-sided debate. That is, one candidate drastically outperformed the other. Pence may have achieved that threshold tonight. In my opinion, certainly he was, it was like 100% Pence night or something like that, Tim Kaine, because I like to speak, I like to study people's speech patterns and so forth. I can recognize the robotic nature of Tim Kaine's speech. It's fairly easy to see. Others may not have noticed that, though. If they don't notice it, then it comes down to what does the internet decide? Which way does the mainstream media spin it? And what do they decide? But it's going to be difficult for anybody to make, I think, the argument that Tim Kaine won. At best, they'll spin it as, oh, it was a stalemate. They were both on point, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter. But I have a feeling, it might move the polls a little bit in Trump's direction, especially on the topic of ISIS. with all the military families in Virginia. It might move the barometer there. I still think it's a lost cause for him to really do any campaigning in Virginia, by the way. In the Rust Belt on jobs, certainly Michigan, a place like that, certainly Ohio, it helps him a lot. Yeah. The role of sound bites in the debate by Gormosp, or Gorm OSB, I don't know. Yeah, sound bites were important in the first debate too. They were important in 2012. They were important in the midterms. You remember like Murdoch talking about legitimate rape so many years ago, and a soundbite was created, and people had a great time talking about how he was a fucking fruitcake, and he is, honestly. There are a lot of Republican fruitcakes in Congress. I can say that. I'm not a Republican. I'm also not a Democrat. I'm supporting Trump because I think he's the better candidate. I don't have any loyalty to the Republican Party. The party can crash and burn and die and stop existing for all I fucking care. As far as the candidates go, though, Trump is the superior candidate. Pence is summing it up tonight fairly well. I think perhaps in a more coherent manner than Trump himself ever has. It's actually a rather strange to see this because I don't even like Pence. Now, if somebody that I have a relative disregard for, that I don't really like. I don't agree with him on many issues. I don't really like their personality. I thought it was a crappy pick when he picked Mike Pence. If that person is capable of doing well enough so that even I'm convinced that they won handily, I would think it'd be a pretty good indicator that people who maybe don't have an onus against him probably think that on an even greater level. And if that's the case, Pence just blew it out of the water and it will move the polls in Trump's direction. Hillary killed Osama bin Laden by her bare hands and shoveled the bodies. I can't read the rest of it. By the way, I don't use marijuana, for the people saying, oh, smoke a ball on camp. No, it's not going to happen. I gave up drugs. Other than chamomile, caffeine, I drink alcohol rarely now. For a while, I was actually drunk every day for a couple months there, beginning in May through July. If you watch a video of me from May through July of this year, I was drunk during every one of those videos, completely three sheets to the wind most of the time. Now it's like back down to, oh, well, I had a beer this week, and that's my drinking level. It doesn't do anything for me anymore. It's like marijuana. It just gives me anxiety attacks. Beer just makes me kind of sleepy, ultimately. It's like, maybe a long trail because it tastes good. The effects I'm not really after. Yeah. Well, Bobby Jones, I actually do support a man's right to his foreskin. I do believe in banning infant circumcision, and I've made a video on this subject. I also support a woman's right to choose regarding her body. I support both of these. I don't think that circumcision should be allowed before a person is old enough to understand the possible complications and ramifications of being circumcised. I also don't care about, oh, well, 6 out of 10, I'm circumcised, just for banter here. So it's not like I'm some nut who is trying to regrow his foreskin, or I'm someone with a foreskin who just thinks it looks better, it feels better, haha, these stupid cut people, and so forth. It's not like that. I believe in bodily autonomy. That doesn't extend to a fetus. It extends certainly to a woman who we know is alive and a citizen, not necessarily to a fetus, where debate still rages over whether it counts as a person, depending on which scripture you use, how you interpret it. If you have a scripture, should the rule of law be secular? Should it be religiously informed? What is morality? I don't really get into all that crap. Ultimately, though, yeah, I believe in bodily autonomy. Yeah, my penis, my rules, essentially. That's generally sums up what I believe. No, I do not worship Cthulhu or any other Lovecraftian entity. I worship myself more than anything else. And books. They smell good. They're harmless. Other than trees died to make them. That does make me a little bit sad, but they smell so good I just can't help myself. Yes, I am a moral relativist. I do not believe in any single objective morality. I do believe that there are moral systems that are superior to others in terms of how they work, though. I believe in a classical liberal/libertarian approach. I do believe in the nation state. I don't believe in homogenization and multiculturalism. I believe people should leave each other alone when possible. I'm generally anti-war. Certainly wars for oil, wars for sport and so forth, I don't support. But I don't pretend that it's fated by some objective moral system. Those are simply my feelings. And I'm smart enough to recognize that's just my opinion. Part of it was how I was raised. Part of it's my understanding of philosophy and logic. I think people should think critically and they should decide morality in that manner. Yeah. Space Michael, I think you mean reincarnation. I believe it exists based on my understanding of experimental physics and my understanding of the occult. I don't claim to know that it exists, and that's what sets me apart from a religious individual. I don't claim to know many of the things that I speak of. I claim to believe in them. As far as the occult goes, I say I know that the occult exists. How you explain it, how you explain how it operates, totally different issue. That's totally subjective and relative. But I think we should probably get less into the spiritual talk, though. This is a political live stream. I'm sure there are people tuning in who don't even care about the occult, even if it does overlap with our elections, honestly. Yeah. Jesus Christ, you're going too fast. I can't pay attention to them all. Yeah. Yes, I would consider doing an interview with Molyneux. I'm not sure if that's the exact correct pronunciation of his last name. Yeah, I watch his channel. I'm subscribed to him. I think he's a smart individual. Again, I don't happen to agree with him on every issue. But at the same time, yeah, he's an aware individual who thinks for himself, which is rare in this world. There's a reason why, he's attracted such a following. It's because people understand what he has to say is valuable and deserves to be said. Yeah, I would consider doing an interview with him. Maybe we could interview each other or something. We'd just sit down and drink a beer or something. I don't know. Yeah, I know that I can scroll up to see the comments and slow them down. That's problematic because then more will pile up. It's moving so quickly that I'm just going through here trying to address what I can. I'll have at some point, I'll be compelled to do an Ask Me Anything video. I know that I will. I don't really want to, but I know I have no choice at this point. There are too many people that want to ask too many questions for me to get to in a stream. For anyone new to the stream, by the way, just for a moment, Pence won the debate handily. I don't think there's much disagreement on that subject. I think even many Clinton fans, they'll say essentially, oh, well, nobody cares about the VP debate. It might have been the Trump fans that would say that if Pence had done poorly, though. So that's just a little bit of spin on it. You can expect that from a little bit from both sides on different issues, mostly from the Democratic side. But it may move the barometer of the election, not because the VP debate is particularly important. It's not as important as any of the presidential debates, but because it was so one-sided, because it was so obvious. I think in any way. I mean, does anybody here think that Kane won the debate, and if so, why? Just type in a 1 if you think that Kane won the debate. We'll see out of like 1,000 people who thinks that, and there probably are. And I'll respect you don't have to hide it or anything. I'll respect your opinion if that's what you believe. I'm just trying to find out if anyone thinks that he did. Okay, Hidolf Adler does. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, maybe a few people unironically think that. I can understand. I'm sure that there are people who support Clinton who subscribe to my channel. I get like 7 or 8 dislikes on every video, so I can understand. Yeah, there are probably a few CTR people there, and I'm sure some people will. I mean, any diehard Clinton fan, they're not going to be receptive to what Pence said. The goal in a debate is not to win over the other side. It's to win over the undecideds or people who just lean to one side or the other. Yeah, I mean, be stupid. Like if Trump comes out on stage and he's trying to woo over a bunch of Democrats, in order to do that, he'd have to out-Democrat the Democrats, disenfranchising his entire voter base to do so. The same would be true of Clinton. It's just not going to happen within a dichotomous system. Now, it's a false dichotomy, but people have been led to believe that it's real. That's why it matters. Why did I delete my videos about running for president? Well, I don't recall deleting them. If I did, and I may have been drunk at the time, it was probably because I've endorsed Trump, previously had endorsed Johnson. So obviously, I mean, it was a joke to begin with. I'm not even eligible to run. I'm not 32 yet. Next time around, technically, I'm eligible. and sticks 2020 or something like that. If I did run, it would be a serious run, but it would be on an internet-only platform. I'm not traveling all around the country for such a thing. It would just be a protest vote because I wouldn't accept the office even if elected to it. I'd take the oath of office, say, oh yeah, I'm president. The next day I'd quit because I don't want to be in Washington, D.C. with all the scumbags. If I was going to run unironically outside of a protest for any office, it would be something within my own state. Mayor or governor or something like that. I wouldn't run for a federal office. I don't like big cities. I come from, DC's many times the size of our largest so-called city, which is Burlington. The whole Burlington metro area is like a fourth of the size of the DC metro. We're pretty small here. I like the forests and the hills. I wouldn't want to move to a more or less flat kind of swampy area surrounded by bureaucrats and potentially people who really probably would want to kill me, honestly. I wouldn't really want that to happen. And I know full well, of course, when a person gets in the presidency, some of their views, even if they were wholesome and good to begin with, they get forgotten because of the job description. You can do more good as a person that simply argues for social reform, in my case, libertarianism, American nationalism, classical liberalism. I don't believe in the police state. I'm anti-war. I can probably do a better job moving society in any direction here with just a few tens of thousands of YouTube subscribers than I could ever do as the US president. Because then also I'd get flack every time something goes wrong, even if I had nothing to do with it. My predecessor screws up the economy. It happens to implode while I'm president. I get the blame for it. I don't fucking think so. I wouldn't be able to take the blame. I'd just stand up there and rant angrily about prior administrations and how retarded they were. And I wouldn't temper my speech either. If I was delivering a speech, if I was the president, I'd use words like that. I'd say fuck and retarded and things like that. People wouldn't like that very much because I'd say, oh, well, my First Amendment rights matter too. Yes, I am from Vegas. It was funny today. Maybe shout out if he's watching. Maybe the dude at Ace Hardware recognized me from this channel, which is pretty funny. I'm in there. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy mulch and cow shit and stuff, even though it's October. And I'm in full regalia too. Like you can't see them right now, but I've got like leather pants on. I've got the cloak. I was wearing the leather vest at the time, and the gloves and the combat boots and everything else. Yeah. That's the way I generally dress when I go out in public. When I'm just lazing around the house, I'll throw a sweater on. If I go out somewhere, I want to look more on the gothic side. It's just the way that I am. It's the way I choose to present myself. Yeah. I'm looking at the comments. I oppose all forms of totalitarianism and authoritarianism. That includes forms of authoritarianism like theocracy or oligarchy. Monarchy, certainly. It also means I'm opposed to crony capitalism. I don't like corporations. I say that as someone who loves the free market. Corporations are a perversion of the same, generally speaking. They government kickbacks. They use government-made tax loopholes in order to pay nothing. I believe we need to drastically lower the top tier of the business tax. But I think that there shouldn't be any business that doesn't pay it. That's what Trump, by the way, has proposed. I like his tax plan. As far as the fiscal side, I completely support Trump. Couldn't be better. Gary Johnson's behind him on such an issue. On other issues, I happen to disagree with him. I disagree even more with Mike Pence, but I'm willing to admit he handily won the debate. Completely decimated Tim Kaine. It was actually funny. It was almost right out of the gate, too. It's like beyond the opening statements, it was pure Pence for an hour and a half. It's remarkable. It did very, very well. My views on Citizens United. Oh, and moderator performance, I'd give her a 10. She was completely fair. She didn't banter. She didn't badger either of them. As far as Citizens United, I had someone claiming to be a libertarian saying, oh, but Citizens United is freedom of speech. No, it's not. It's about campaign contributions. It's about money. It has nothing to do with speech. A corporation is not a person. A business entity is not a person. It's built up from people. The only person being represented in that capacity is whoever's in charge of the monetary end of it. I don't believe in unlimited campaign contributions. I believe the only campaign contributions that should exist in any way, shape, or form is in the form of individual donations, capped at a reasonable amount. Make it 1,000, make it 2,000, make it 10,000. Doesn't matter. Capped individual donations and nothing else. Public money may be for parties that are at or above some threshold. The problem with that is then you have to determine what the threshold is. It might get manipulated by whichever party's in power to keep third parties out. That becomes a problem. Individual cap donations, no PACs, no super PACs, no lobbying firms, none of them. They shouldn't donate it. They shouldn't have a penny. They shouldn't exist. There should be no lobbies. They shouldn't exist at all. They're all special interests. Look, even lobbies who I happen to agree with, like the National Rifle Association, I support them, but they're still a special interest group. That's what they are. Or the National Right to Life Committee or anything else under the sun. They're all special interest groups. It's literally the description of what they do. I may agree with them on issues. I'm more pro-gun than the average NRA member for the most part. I don't care if people have automatic weapons. I don't care if they carry around crates of grenades, because honestly, I trust them more with them than I trust most government agencies with them. But at the same time, they're still a special interest group and they shouldn't be donating to political campaigns. It just creates an unhealthy atmosphere. The elections are not the same as standard speech, and this isn't even speech. It's not like they're speaking, they're just donating money. Some of this comes from foreign donors. China gives $1 million to some firm that in turn gives $1 million to some super PAC that in turn funds a candidate. Well, there you have it, indirect control by the Chinese of an election system. When Kane, by the way, badgers constantly about Trump's supposed business dealings with Russia, my goodness, why would he, if he was taking commands from Putin, why would he make it so opaque? He'd just do what every other politician does and use a slush fund. The Clintons are famous for this. Yeah. Oh, my thoughts on the Philippine president telling Obama to go to hell. Oh, I agree with him. I don't care about Obama. He's an outgoing lame duck president. He doesn't represent my views. He doesn't represent the views of most Americans. I'm not saying that because he's a Democrat. Bush didn't represent my views either. Bush was similar to him. Warmonger, corrupt, supports the surveillance apparatus. They're all a bunch of fucking losers. That's what most of these people are. That includes basically all of Congress. I like Rand Paul. I like Justin Amash on most issues. I have respect for a few others. That's basically it. The Supreme Court justices don't care. They're all a bunch of weirdos to me. It's not like I would sit down and be able to have an average conversation with them. I don't like Ayn Rand. The selfishness, the implicit selfishness, you could say, implicit bias of Ayn Rand turns me off to the ideology. What she expresses is not libertarianism. Libertarianism would be more optimistic, as in we support this freedom specifically so people's lives will be better. Collectively, oddly enough, in an almost communal sense, communally speaking, everyone's life improves generally. For those whose don't, for someone who's experienced some disaster, I don't disagree with giving aid to those who are starving or something like that, especially in time of crisis. That doesn't mean that I'm deviating from the libertarian platform, because I'm not an Ayn Rand objectivist. I'm not a Paul Ryan. I'm not a crony capitalist who believes that might is right at the most central fundamental element. I believe it situationally, but not in all cases, and not as a matter of public policy when pragmatism would argue against it. No. Yeah. Do you think Trump already knows who's going to win? No. I don't believe in that sort of quasi-conspiratorial level of corruption in government. Keep this in mind. Whenever two or more individuals have ambition, they're going to clash and try to stab each other in the backs. Government's made of a whole bunch of different agencies and bureaus, individuals, parties, and some moneyed interests and so forth. They still compete. It's actually the one thing keeping us from outright tyranny, oddly enough. But it also strangles us with bureaucracy, because these bureaus then compete for money as well. And that's why your taxes keep going up. This is one of the fundamental problems with government. How do you stop it from growing? But no, I don't believe that Trump or Clinton is corrupt to the level where they've got a stranglehold on literally everything. Both of them have allies. They do compete, even within a false dichotomy two-party system, because of money, oddly enough, because those parties are still separate. They're getting money from the same people. The investors don't care who wins, but the parties do, because they're thriving on that money. They have to also manipulate the voters, which means they have to at least have some core central principles. Whether they're something you'd applaud or not is totally different. But they are all corrupt, and they're all in it for the money for the most part. Let's face it. Should Pence have attacked the Clinton emails more? No. Because for the most part, for most undecided voters, they're obviously not an issue, or they wouldn't be undecided voters. He was wise to primarily attack as well. This was another thing Pence, I think, did really well. He went after the idea of an extremely negative campaign, a campaign of negativity and insults, was echoed by Kaine several times. Pence turned it around successfully and said, no, it's actually Clinton and Kaine are constantly fear-mongering, constantly talking about all the evil things supposedly Trump's doing. They're the ones that have a negative campaign. And they're right. They're actually right. If you look at what the campaigns have said, Trump spent months primarily talking about literally the overarching message, make America great again. It's sort of an empty buzzword. It's like forward, or I'm with her, or change we can believe in. It's just a buzz term. That's true. But the things that he's talking about as a departure from our standard policy could benefit the public, and that's what they're being billed as. The Clinton campaign for some weeks now has primarily ruminated on Trump is scary, you should be afraid of Trump, and he'll probably start a nuclear war, and or he's a puppet of Putin. I'm not sure how, by the way, those two coexist. If he's a puppet of the Russians, how would we enter a nuclear war with Russia? I would think that that would be the one thing that wouldn't happen. Unless, Putin's a complete masochist and he just wants to get irradiated. Maybe he wants to get ghoulified. I don't know. But that is true. At least for some weeks, the Clinton campaign has been the negative campaign. One could argue that it works to some extent with undecided voters, but for how long? Will it continue to work through November? I choose to believe it won't, because it'll wear off. There's only so many lines of attack one can use within a negative campaign. Well, our opponent is fundamentally screwed up and will start a war. Okay, well, that's already been repeated for some time. Anyone that cares, has already switched their vote. That's why a campaign does need to occasionally switch up its tactics to keep things new, to affect new groups of people who may not be receptive to the kind of message you've been using for a week or two. If you don't do that, it gets stale, it gets boring, turnout maybe falters a little bit, and Clinton is coming perilously close, I'll say, on this issue to really falling in that pothole. As far as losing some of her support, specifically because she refuses to change it up. She uses the focus groups. Pence pointed this out. The danger to doing that is that the focus group is not the general public. And that's really the danger. No, I don't have a Keck statue. I don't really need a frog statue. I've got like a dolphin skull and stuff like that. Also, those behind me, the Asian art there. Apparently, some of them are from the 50s and some are from the 80s. Now, the dragon one there I've known of since I was a kid. Like, it was there before I was in the apartment we used to be in over in the tiny village of Woodstock. I've actually taken up collecting them. Just got another one off eBay today. They're just bamboo, like Japanese wall hangs. For some reason, they fascinate me. They're like really cool. So I don't know exactly how the fuck did I get on that subject. Doesn't matter. Yeah. No, I'm not going to sing for you on a live stream. I'm only going to sing if I've got backing, music and so forth. No, I'm not Asian. I am supposedly part Native American, like Abenaki or something. It's not necessarily known, and I do know that I'm predominantly of English heritage. Family name comes from England, tracing the ancestry. It's like all English and Scottish. So naturally, I like some relatively odd foods because they survived on haggis for 1,000 years. Yeah. My pinky finger, my nail fucked up because of all the gardening that I did. And so I've got it wrapped right now just to sort of protect it. Use the isopropyl alcohol and all that crap. Keep it from getting infected. Don't want to have to make like a cyst popping video or something like that because that'd be kind of ignominious. But yeah, I've got it wrapped for its own protection, just to keep it away from dirt or anything like that. Take my health consciousness to a new level. Yeah. Now, I'm not going on Alex Jones. I don't like Alex Jones. Alex Jones is crazy. Look at what he did here. Case in point. I'll probably end the stream in like 5-10 minutes or so, but I do have to point this out. Look at how many people now are convinced that WikiLeaks has no material on Clinton, and they're like, oh, well, he's just a snake. Assange is just stupid. He doesn't have anything. Because Alex Jones incorrectly reported that his balcony speech, moved to a conference through Berlin, was going to be on the Clinton leaks. And Alex Jones sits there, acts incredulous, like, oh, well, why is he talking about Hillary Clinton taking her down? He must have gotten paid off by the New World Order or something like that. And he never said that the conference was going to be about the Clinton leaks. This is the third time I've had to point it out to somebody. He never said that it was. It was just an announcement. He's made them before. They don't all pertain just to Clinton. The one thing he did announce there is, yeah, we will be leaking more material on the U.S. election, which probably is going to have to do with Clinton, considering the fact that he just pointed out, and WikiLeaks posted about the day before, oh yeah, Hillary Clinton thought it was a good idea to drone him. Well, who do you think that he's rooting against in this election? So Alex Jones can screw himself. He's retarded. There's no other word for it. He claims to sell special iodine to people. Now, what do we know, chem students? Iodine's an element. So unless you're selling somebody some isotope of iodine that's potentially radioactive, it's not special iodine. It's iodine with water added, or iodine with sugar added, or iodine in a flashy bottle that has Alex Jones' fat face smoking a cigar on it, getting driven up in cost, that he got from some lab supplier in bulk for 1/10 of the price. So screw Alex Jones. I don't like Alex Jones. A lot of these people that lean maybe more towards the conspiratorial side, I have respect for him. I like Dabu7. A little paranoid at times, but informative. Paul Begley, who's a big-time evangelical. Here I am. I'm like, Satan and paganism and occultism. I like Paul Begley. I'm subscribed to his channel. I have been for a couple years. But Alex Jones, hell no. I don't watch any of his material. Occasionally, he's entertaining, and that's all. So, Art Bell is better. George Norrie, way better. Anything really better than Alex. Henry Macau is more on point than Alex Jones half the time. And he is controlled opposition. He's just a corporatist. He's making money. That's all he is. He's not even really media. He's just an entertainer. People need to understand that. You have a lot of like hardcore Alex Jones supporters that think that he's some great knight that's going to take down the Illuminati or something. But he's been doing this crap for years, and no meaningful reform has ever resulted from anything Alex Jones has done or said. And his hardcore fans, when you point this out, will say, well, you must be New World Order. You must be Illuminati. It's very funny. It's like back when I supported Johnson, when I'd go and criticize Clinton, people would assume that I was a Trump supporter without realizing it's not some dichotomy. It's not Alex Jones versus some seven-headed Babylonian whore or something like that. It's not the way the world works. It's Alex Jones, the corporate merchant salesman who makes money making infotainment, essentially. Occasionally covers actual news. He does. He spins it through his analysis, but he does talk about current events, and occasionally is entertaining. And then he hawks his products. It's him versus other people who do the same shit. If the government were honestly concerned about him, they would be suggesting drone strikes on him. Apparently, they did this for Assange. They feel threatened by Assange enough to suggest, oh, maybe we should just drone him. Some people said he was in Sweden at the time. So as though that makes it better. Oh, yeah, we're going to put a big hole in Stockholm and crater the road and kill 100 civilians to kill this whistleblower. Okay, it's an act of war, but okay. I suppose you can do that. The Swedes are just going to roll over and play dead if you did that anyway. They're not going to raise the issue. They'll say, oh, good. Oh, we hated that rapist or something like that. They still use the rapist line, by the way. Yeah. What do I think about Varg? I assume you mean of black metal fame. I like him. He's gone more like pagan survivalist recently, with Thulian perspective, of course. Yeah, he is a respectable man. I think he's got the right idea, too. The idea of being self-sufficient, more in tune with nature, perhaps more spiritual, rather than so filled with rage and just burning churches and stuff. That is the way to go. The idea that burning a church really accomplishes anything, even if you're anti-Christian, it doesn't. It's like those German nationalists or whatever that bombed out that mosque in, I think it was Dresden the other day. It doesn't accomplish anything. It just makes you look violent. It's very funny. Some nationalist movement exists. They say, well, this migrant group, this religious group, whatever, is violent. They're like savages. And then they go and bomb a mosque. What ends up happening is, obviously the media, but certainly the public at large looks at that and says, well, how are you any different? And it's the big problem with certain movements. This happens with communism too, honestly. They're way more violent than any nationalist front has ever been. They purge people openly and don't give a crap about human life because they're communists. But at the same time, perhaps the mainstream media outlets in most European countries are more tolerant of extreme left ideologies, so-called, than so-called extreme right ideologies. It's just the way that it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, SS action figures. Well, who cares? It's historical memorabilia. People need to stop being so fucking terrified of a bunch of dead Nazis, because that's what 99% of them are. That was back in the 1940s. Communism still exists and oppresses people now, but when I look around, I don't see many Reichs around the world. I don't see many Nazi regimes. In fact, there are none. And people still act, I mean, even in the 80s and 90s, they're like the Hollywood boogeyman. You get like Indiana Jones versus this Nazi and that Nazi, and they're all warped out and so forth. It's very Hollywood-esque, and I know it's very lucrative for certain people. But at the same time, people need to give it a rest. You know, all the Nazis are either extremely geriatric, they're like older than Trump or Clinton at this point, or they're dead. They either died in the war or they're deceased of natural causes, heart attack, stroke, whatever it happens to be. There are no secret armies of Nazis hiding out in Patagonia or the Swiss Alps or under the ice sheets of Antarctica waiting to strike. If they ever had a presence, I pointed this out, they probably did permeate Antarctica, but if you think they had a lasting presence with 40s era technology, I think they probably froze to death. I think they probably realized that the resupplies weren't coming and they started to starve, and maybe they made it to South America, maybe they died en route, maybe their U-boat stopped working, and they literally suffered and died in the freezing cold under the ice in pitch blackness, slowly going insane as they starved to death. That's probably what happened to them. So I don't see why people are so worried about, something like that. Oh, Varg got his son SS action figures. Well, what, would you rather him get him a Che Guevara t-shirt? You can buy that in Walmart. He killed a bunch of people. What's the difference? Yeah. Oh, a good one. Two things. Then I'll end the stream. Staying in Vermont, at least short term. It's where I live. As far as Clinton being doomed tomorrow, this goes into sort of the Roger Stone material. He tweeted out somewhat cryptically, oh, Hillary's done on Wednesday. He could be aware that James O'Keefe is releasing a damaging tape on that day. And O'Keefe swears it's real. He's being very specific about it. He says he has it physically. I don't have a reason not to believe him. He's the dude who took down Acorn. When he sensationalizes, most people, if they're a whistleblower, conspiracy theorist, whatever, if they speak in vague terms and they don't tell you kind of what it pertains to, it's not real. It's just a bunch of crap. If they give you specifics, like what Glenn Beck did when he said, oh, we have a whistleblower and so forth. And I analyzed it at the time. Said, well, chances are it's not real. If they give specifics, it tends to be real. James O'Keefe is giving specifics. I have no reason to doubt that he does have a tape of Clinton disparaging black citizens. If that's the case, yeah, her campaign will be done as soon as it hits the mainstream media. And it wouldn't be possible for them to ignore it. It would go viral online. Smaller sites would cover it. It would go even more viral. It would get onto TV. Everyone would know, and her campaign would be cooked. It could be that he's aware that Assange is going to leak something on Wednesday, a teaser to his big releases, or maybe a big release before an even bigger release, in which case, my goodness, it'll be a 1-2 punch. It's possible. Or it could be he's just full of shit. Maybe he was talking about the debate. Maybe it was his way of saying, hey, Mike Pence is going to make mincemeat of Tim Kaine and everything will change. I don't think the latter part's true. I think the former part did. Of course, Tim Kaine largely got his ass handed to him. I can't wait to check the polls. I have a feeling that this time the snap polls and the online polls will largely sync up, which is to say, Tim Kaine didn't do too well. He was not as well prepared as Mike Pence, and he didn't speak as well as Mike Pence, and he repeatedly ignored what he was asked in order to talk about tax returns, unlike Mike Pence. Yeah, I wouldn't want to moderate a presidential debate because as soon as they started to speak over each other, I'd just say silence, and then I'd pound a gavel on the table or something. It wouldn't be good. Well, Pence lying about Trump's statements would be the same as Tim Kaine lying about Clinton's statements. Nobody's going to care. People either accept it right away and no amount of spin matters, or, they don't accept it, in which case no spin matters. It's not about truth. It's about perception. The whole election has been. The last election largely was a perception election, too. Romney and Obama said basically the same things, but Romney was perceived of as boring, out of touch, and, inexperienced compared to the person who was an incumbent, which gave him an advantage. That's why Obama won. It's about perception. Most people perceive Trump as a bit incoherent, but increasingly as a person who is capable of leading and is intending to lead the country somewhere that it is not currently. Clinton is perceived of as largely untrustworthy and increasingly so, and wanting to maintain a status quo that's beginning to fall out of favor even more than it already has. That's the danger for her candidacy. The only reason she's been a little bit up in polling in the last round of polling is largely statistical noise. I don't believe that she surged post-debate. By the way, Trump's not going to surge because Mike Pence did well. He might gain a little bit more momentum back. But at the same time, don't expect him to suddenly be like 10 points up in Pennsylvania because Mike Pence is more coherent than Tim Kaine. It's just that would be beyond the wildest dreams of the Trump campaign. It helps him. The fact that Pence did very well helps him. But it doesn't help him to that degree. It doesn't win him the election overnight. And with that, I think I'm going to end the live stream. Yes, indeed. The frog swastikas aren't even properly formatted, so why the hell are you posting them? Yeah. Ian Murphy and Positive Movement. Yeah, but it's time to end the live stream now. At some point I have to sleep. At some point I should probably eat more food. I didn't eat dinner. All I had today was some, I can't pronounce it. It's that weird curried sort of goopy stuff with the peas in it. It's an Indian food. It's really tasty. It's also pretty spicy, really curry-ish. I take that, and the Kohinoor company makes best. I can only get it at Big Lots. Best Indian food outside of like a restaurant or like something homemade. It's actually really good. I get the rice and the other stuff, the more, fluid-like liquefied foods. I mix them together and cook them. And then I sort of parcel them out. That's what I had for breakfast and lunch, along with a bunch of pumpernickel bread. I dip it in there. It's so tasty. And it gives me a huge amount of energy. I don't know exactly what in its composition. I don't know whether it's the curry or what. It gives me so much energy throughout the day. I don't need Alex Jones energy supplements. I've got coffee and I've got curry. That's enough for me. Half the time I don't even eat breakfast. Sometimes I don't eat breakfast or lunch. Sometimes I don't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and then I just snack all night. Then sometimes I stuff my face all day long. I'm unrepentant about it. I'm a very strange person, and I admit that. Tonight, though, the only one looking strange was Tim Kaine, specifically in his demeanor. I just can't get over that, like jaw clenched, staring, and the fact that one of his eyebrows is almost always up, like 2 inches above the other. A little bit on the disturbing side for me, and I won't lie about the fact that appearance does matter within an election, including with me. If someone appears to be off-kilter, generally their words are construed as a little bit more off-kilter than if somebody looks, quote-unquote, normal, of course. But yeah, that's about all. I'm going to end the stream now so I can eat and do all that other stuff. Peace out.